Folks, it is July 13th, 2025. It's the day after the big boxing spectacular that took place in Queens yesterday. Let's talk about three of those fights. I'm going to save the Hamza Shiraz fight for a separate video. But first, remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Let me add a second addendum. I need it for this video. Folks, this is not a fan club site. Right? I can have a lot of respect for a fighter. I can believe a fighter is immensely talented. But when it comes to betting, I'm going to play the odds. I'm going to look for the styles. I'm going to consider which fighter I think did better, whatever the crowd thinks. Right? I'm not trying to be everyone's best friend. Right? I'm just a gambler trying to get an edge on the casino. Right? I'm not trying to fall into groupthink. I'm trying to think for myself. So if there's an edge to be had, I'm going to pursue it. Right? Shakur Stevenson against William Zepeda. You heard the scorecards. Right? Judges having this fight 10-2 and stuff like that. Right, folks? The fight I watched, and I think Shakur Stevenson's immensely talented. The fight I watched was a jump ball. Right? I thought the fight was much closer than the scorecards. Let me just say, this fight was a expectation game fight, right? Stevenson was something like a 10-1 and 9-1 favorite in many sports books. Right? It was an expectation game. Stevenson, going into the fight, is viewed as one of the best fighters in the sport of boxing. Right? It was also a location, possession type of setup. Right? Stevenson's from Newark, which is nearby. Right? The press corps in New York City knows about, fighters in, the tri-state area. Right? Certainly fighters from Newark. Right? They know Stevenson is highly thought of. Stevenson has had many of his fights in Newark. In the New York City area, Stevenson is one of the most successful fighters. Right? In terms of how he's viewed in boxing. Now that said, folks, you know the scoring of this fight wasn't accurate. You know the scoring of this fight is really in the spur of the moment scoring. You know you're going to sit down 2 years from now. You're going to look at this fight, the same film, and you're going to think privately to yourself, man, this fight was much better than I remember. You're going to realize this fight was much more competitive than you remember. And folks, the BS scoring is evident. It's evident. And I'm not alleging corruption. Just people caught up in the moment. Whatever that is. Right? But folks, I believe the scoring on this fight was way off. And the giveaway is in the CompuBox numbers. Not that I think they're completely accurate for this fight. But just understand, over 12 rounds, let's just do the math. Over 12 rounds, CompuBox is telling you that William Zapeda, who lost this fight 10 rounds to 2 and other commensurate scores, landed 153 power shots. Folks, to put that in perspective, understand the 153 power shots that William Zapeda landed were more than the combined number of punches, not power shots, but punches, a wider category, landed combined by both fighters in the Katie Taylor-Amanda Serrano fight. Let's put the math differently, because we're hearing Stevenson is a defensive guru. He's a wizard. Wow, is he hard to hit. Folks, not counting Zepeda's jabs. Zepeda per round, according to CompuBox, landed more than 12 power shots. Right, folks? I'll just put it to you this way, from this seat. I'm talking for myself. I'm not talking for anyone else. I understand there's another narrative out there. I understand it's supported by, during the fight, Antonio Tarver, right? Who, kept telling you what was happening from Stevenson's perspective, right? It was clear that Tarver, who normally is a great analyst, it was clear that Tarver bought into this narrative of Stevenson standing and fighting. Right? Oh, here's Stevenson. He's standing and fighting. You would have thought this was Ray Leonard Duran, the first fight. Right? Here he is standing and fighting. Right, folks? The reality from my seat, where I was watching, had Zapeda rolling Stevenson, winning at least, depending on how you looked at things, but baseline for me, 3 of the first 4 rounds. Right, folks? Stevenson couldn't stay away from the ropes. In the 3rd round, Stevenson gets hit with the shot of the fight. Is hurt. He, leans on the ropes. Zapeda just didn't have enough time left in the round to close the show. What I'm telling you in this video, and you heard the judges' scorecards, is that after the first 4 rounds, Zapeda had already won as many rounds as some judges gave him for the entire fight. Right, folks? Stevenson was in trouble. Stevenson's own corner after the first round was telling him, hey man, you can't let, my words, not their words, this visual continue of you getting backed up to the ropes. Right now, Stevenson, it was interesting. He's over by the ropes. Let's get his defense right now. Right? And he is defensively blessed. But Stevenson has his offhand down around his kidney. Right now, folks, this is by design. This is something he thought of. Right? He has his left hand up. He's a southpaw. He has his left hand up by the side of his face. And Stevenson has a lean. Right? This is brilliant stuff. It's brilliant stuff. Stevenson has a lean where, as Zapeda throws shots, Stevenson's leaning back, so some of the shots miss him. But understand, in that position, Stevenson himself can't dole out punishment. His jab hand is smothered. Zapeda, a southpaw, is wisely over on Stevenson's right side, and he's riddling him. He's riddling him. So let me just say, I don't know how you watch this fight. Just keeping it real here. I don't know how you watch this fight and give Zapeda less than 5 rounds. Unless you're viewing him as a long shot against a big favorite. And you've bought into the hype that Stevenson is a future Hall of Famer in his 20s, let's just say without the Canelo resume, right? And that the fight's a foregone conclusion. Right, folks? I can't justify the judges' scorecards. When I first started hearing the scorecards, I thought, oh, wow, did Zepeda pull this off? Because understand, if you key in on the volume, and if you realize that Zapeda is throwing some shots just to position Stevenson, not necessarily to land them. High volume guys are using volume as a weapon. If you're honest with yourself and you realize this is the toughest fight Stevenson has had as a professional, right? Then you would understand that Zapeda, if he's lost this fight, and I'm not saying he didn't lose, Stevenson does some things in the second half that are interesting. Right, but you realize if Zapeda lost, the scoring had to be either 6-5-1 or 7-5. Right, in the second half of the fight, Stevenson is able to get off the ropes. Now understand, the second half of the fight, I think Zapeda over the last 6 rounds wins at least 2 of the rounds. At least. Right? This fight's a jump ball. Stevenson, when he gets off the ropes, then you start to see the hand speed, the offense, right? Stevenson can be a combination puncher. You start to see Stevenson's ring coverage. Stevenson can fully extend that left hand. He doesn't have to be next to you. Right? You need to keep that in mind because 135 has some new jacks. Kid Austin, does he have the ring coverage that Stevenson has? Folks, that's an open question. When Stevenson's leaning back up top, would Kid Austin be able to hit Stevenson as Stevenson leans back from the pocket? Does Abdullah Mason, another new jack? Folks, 135 has some freshmen who've just hit high school. Right? Abdullah Mason, can he match Stevenson in ring coverage? Let's remember, Abdullah Mason got knocked down in a fight. Right? Can he match Stevenson, who's pinpoint? Right? Can throw that straight left through a keyhole. Can Abdullah Mason, in a fight where Stevenson is able to get off the ropes, be in the middle of the ring, that's where he's most effective, actually start bending his body? Stevenson has an excellent upper body. Could these young guys rough him up like Zepeda? Folks, I'm telling you, there's a distinct possibility that at 135, the land of the troubled Gervonta Davis, right? Davis has run into more legal problems. That William Zepeda is the most competitive opponent for Shakur Stevenson. You wouldn't tell it from these scorecards because these scorecards were ridiculous in my eyes. Right? But folks, Zapeda just forced Stevenson to show you the best tools in his holster. Right? Stevenson should be grateful for having been tested like this. Let me just point out, I personally have little doubt that if this exact fight took place in LA or Mexico, that Zapeda could have been declared the winner. This was a great fight, in my opinion, marred somewhat by scoring. Let me say, too, the telecast was way too much of a Stevenson love fest for me. Right? At the end of the fight, they showed you Claressa Shields in the crowd. Weren't you supposed to feel warm and cuddly? Right? To the gamblers out there who are just crunching numbers in their head. Zepeda showed you that he could back up and keep a fresh Shakur Stevenson over by the ropes for at least the first 40% of the fight. Right? What's the punch of the fight, folks? It's the third round. Stevenson gets hit with a body shot. Zapeda is close enough to Stevenson. And understand, that's an accomplishment for an opponent. He's close enough to Stevenson to hurt Stevenson to the body. Let's get through the hype and the false narrative. Right? Stevenson smiling as they're announcing the judges' scorecards. Right? Stevenson has facial expressions. He's a high buy-in guy. He has facial expressions where you're supposed to, be looking at his emotions and stuff like that. Right? Let's get by the false narrative that's being thrown out there. Let's not jump to conclusions about the scoring until you see the fight. If you see the fight and Stevenson is on his back foot and he's pinned up against the ropes out of necessity, and he's getting hit with body shots, right? And you're looking at Zapeda, who clearly has the superior volume, and you're thinking to yourself, who has the opponent where they want them? Right, folks? Stevenson is not Salvador Sanchez. Zapeda is not Wilfredo Gomez. Right? It's not like Stevenson wanted to be up over by the ropes. It's not like Stevenson wanted Zapeda right in front of him, throwing superior volume. Stevenson's not getting his way early in this fight. The fighter who is William Zapeda. Right now, I know there's going to be a group out there who say, Dwyer has sour grapes. Hey, you know what? My hedge actually was a washout. You didn't lose money. If you were a premium subscriber, the hedge was to take Stevenson to win, hedged with Zapeda by stoppage. Right? Understand how ridiculously priced this fight was. Zapeda by stoppage was going off at a 9-1 or 10-1. Right? Shakur won. It's a washout. Right? The money you won on the Shakur side of the ledger, you gave away on the William Zapeda side of the ledger. Living for another day while being able to take swings for the fences, to me, is a prudent betting strategy. Right? Let me say, too, that I can see a view on the fight where Stevenson wins the fight. Right? You can say, wow, when Stevenson got his back off the ropes and was in the middle of the ring, and was able to circle and was able to create a dynamic where occasionally Zepeda's on Stevenson's left side, where Stevenson punishes you. I could see a scenario where Stevenson won the fight. But folks, don't insult my intelligence with these scorecards. Right? That was ridiculous. This was a close fight. What I want people to do too is look at when the scoring's announced. Look at the Stevenson. Stevenson's body language is always, oh, I've won this fight by a wide margin. But then look at the Zapeda group. Right, folks? Zapeda, Oscar De La Hoya, they thought there was a chance that their guy won this fight. Let me go further. They knew there was a chance that their guy won this fight. After all, most of the fight was fought on his terms. After all, Stevenson has never looked this bad as a pro. Right? So please, I know this morning you're reading a lot of stories that say, oh, Stevenson didn't fight. Fought. Right? Oh, Stevenson was fighting back on William Zapeda. Right? I know Stevenson after the fight said, hey, I needed to prove to people I was a dog. Yeah, you were a dog with your back up against the ropes, getting run over the first 4 rounds. Stop the BS. Let me say this too. To me, I appreciate when a Ray Leonard talks about the Thomas Hearns rematch these days and actually openly admits that he lost that fight. Right? I don't need to hear the BS where some fighter is trying to act like things went, according to plan, when the other guy again landed more than 150 power shots. Come on. To the boxing press too. Track down these judges. Ask them, hey, how can a guy who averages more than 12 power shots a round, who's never knocked down in the fight, who isn't marked up in the fight, only win 2 rounds? Right, folks? We know the sport prefers certain fighters. We know certain fighters bring a certain charisma. Right? If you're interested in what actually happened, watch the fight. In the comment section of this YouTube video, this is an interactive forum. Tell us how many rounds you thought William Zepeda won. I'm guessing there are going to be some people who are going to have thought that Zapeda either won the fight was a draw, won 5 rounds, at worst won 4 rounds. Let's talk about some other fights. Now, this fight I got wrong. The Matias versus Puello fight, I took the underdog. I like Puello. Right? I did not see a scenario where Matias could win a decision. Now, this fight is razor close. This fight could have gone either way. Right? I thought Matias was too obvious. Right? Front foot heavy guy, continually is walking in the pocket. You understand he's really a one-handed fighter, and that hand is his left. I thought Puello neutralized it. I thought Puello made a miss. I thought Puello's lateral movement showed a certain level of ring generalship. I cannot complain about the decision because the fight was a close fight. Right? But let's just say Shakur Stevenson would have a harder time against Puello than he would Matias. Right? Matias for Shakur Stevenson would be too obvious. Zapeda is more two-handed than Matias is. Right? So you, the gambler, okay, this fight, I'm not going to criticize the judges. That fight, jump ball, could have gone either way. Right there, the judges aren't trying to convince me that a competitive fight was a 10-2 fight. Right? Okay. Matias, I'll say too, he, certainly is determined. Right? But if you're on the Matias side of the ledger, let's admit, particularly after the Paro fight, that there are some concerns about this guy's stamina. Right? This is the first fight Matias has won that went the distance. Right? This is the knockout puncher who thinks he's going to get rid of you by the 8th round. Then when the fight lingers, it's a uh-oh moment. Right? I believe slick guys with defense, Shakur Stevenson, for example, might be able to push this into the later rounds, knowing Matias is going to start to fade badly in the later rounds. Right? Good fight by both men. I would say, though, just as a person who bets on boxing, that Puello has the greater upside. Matias, no doubt, is a big puncher, but folks, you saw that power neutralized. At a certain level of the game, when you're one-handed, opponents can figure out how to dampen your power. Right? I understand that Riyadh season already has another fighter, another fighter in the queue for Matias. Matias is a icon in Puerto Rico. He is exciting to watch. There's going to be action in his fights because he's bringing a lot of action. right? Just understand that this was a razor close fight. Let me also make a comment here that some people are not going to like, right? You know, in boxing, you have to beat the champion to take his title. In the comment section of this YouTube video, and I understand Matias is a former champion. Folks, there are no exceptions. There shouldn't be. Right? Do you feel personally that Matias did enough to take Puello's title? Tell us about that in the comment section of this YouTube video. Now let me talk about the revelation of the night. This is the outcome that I have the biggest problem with. Right? The Stevenson fight was close. My problem there is with the judges. Right? Stevenson winning, I'm not going to lose a kidney over it. Right? Stevenson did look good the last third of the fight. The Puello fight, my problem there is really just a photo finish fight. Am I going to take the champion's title, an unbeaten champion's title? Worse yet, not just a champ, but an unbeaten champion. If I'm a judge, am I going to award the challenger in a fight that, to me, is a photo finish? That's the question for that fight. This fight, the revelation of the night, Katayv against David Morrell. Right, this fight, I have a deeper question. Who actually won the fight? Now let's do the math. And here the math is inconvenient for the Morell side of the ledger. 10-round fight. Right? It's 10 rounds. Clear knockdown. Right? Katayv drops Morell. First time in Morell's career he's down. Morell is so confused that the ref goes over to him and Morell is looking away from the ref. Folks, the ref could have waved off the fight. Then Morell compounds it. Morell's lucky it's at the end of the round. Morell then bows to the crowd. What's he doing? Is this just pride? Or is this a guy who's completely confused? He's just been hit and dropped. He stands up. He's not even sure what's going on in the fight. Well, understand, it's a clear knockdown. It's not a slip. Right? There's no question it's not a slip. The ref gives Morell a break. Right? You know, because when the ref goes over, Morell's looking at the crowd and stuff like that. We understand getting knocked down, particularly the first time in your career, you know, can be an emotional moment. But folks, in a 10-round fight, what that means is if that knockdown is counted as a 10-8, and I don't know how it couldn't be. I mean, Morell goes down off a punch. Right? If it's a 10-8 round, then doing the math, that leaves 9 rounds. That means that Morell has to make up 2 points to get a draw. He needs to make up 3 points if he's going to win by decision. Folks, that means apart from the knockdown, right? Morell in the other 9 rounds, according to my math, correct me please. You're invited to correct me in the comment section of this video. Morell has to win 6 of the remaining 9 rounds. In other words, it has to be clear. You're watching the fight and you're thinking, man, Morell has the edge. He's winning 2 rounds. For every round, his opponent wins. That's the only way you get to a decision. That Morell, in a fight where he's legitimately knocked down, wins a decision. That's the only way. If the other 9 rounds aren't 6-3, Morell can't win a decision. Now, folks, on the planet we're living in, Morell somehow wins a decision in this fight. I personally thought the guy who got the knockdown, Khataev, won the fight. Understand, Morell had to dig deep, and I mean deep, to win the 9th round. Then he is back under fire in the 10th round. Let me say, too, by the time of the knockdown, I would argue that Katayv got off to a fast start. He's won at least, 2 rounds before the knockdown. Right? I thought Katayv gets off to a fast start. I thought Katayv has Morell in danger at different times in the fight. I thought Katayv gets the knockdown and fights Morell to a standstill the rest of the fight. Folks, I believe the Russian got jobbed. Right? I thought Morell fought a courageous fight. I thought Morell certainly has a big heart. Let me just say, too, in all of boxing, you'd be hard-pressed to find a guy who over his last 2 fights has fought better opposition than David Morell, right? The prior fight was Benavidez. I'm telling you, this Katayv guy, who I did not know before watching this card, I didn't make a pre-fight video on the fight, even though it featured David Morell. This Katayv fighter is going to have legs. Folks, 175 just got a lot more loaded. This guy can punch with anybody. Think about it. The guy hits so hard that he's in front of David Morell, who can throw volume at you. And he has his hands dangling at his side because he knows he hits too hard for Morell to open up. Right? This guy's the revelation of the night. Serious puncher. Let me just say this, though. Sergio Mora makes a great point. It's great announcing where they point out that sometimes these muscle-bound guys, this guy looks like he's straight out of weightlifting class, these muscle-bound guys sometimes get tired later in fights, right? Because, the muscles demand a lot of energy. Also, sometimes these muscle-bound guys really can't sustain the power. Right? Now, think of that thought when you're looking at a slender Hamza Shiraz, right? Who, I'm sure Edgar Berlanga will tell you, is a major puncher. Right? Some of the best punchers I've seen, Alexis Arguello, right? Thomas Hearns, were slender guys. Right? Now, in fairness to Katayv, who looked tired to me after 7 rounds, does dig deep, does get a second wind here. Right? I thought he won the 10th round. Right? But, you and I know championship fights are 12-round fights. You and I know that at 175, you're dealing with some great stamina in Beterbiev, in Bivol, right? I thought Callum Smith showed great stamina in that Buatsi fight, right? David Benavidez went 12 rounds at 168 with Khaled Plant. He has great stamina. The secret to beating Katayv might be to take him into the later rounds. Folks, he's the revelation of the night. This is a world-class fighter at 175. I thought he beat David Morell, right? And Morell is not chopped liver. Morell, by the way, great stamina. He's not chopped liver, right? I just thought that he gets caught by this guy, This guy is bold enough, believes in his power enough to be walking down David Morell. I thought Morell understood he couldn't risk being hit with this guy's level of counters. I thought this guy took Morell out of his game. Right? The judges viewed it differently, gave Morell the close split decision. Let me hear from you in the comment section of this YouTube video. Right, to sum it up, folks, I thought it was a great card. I thought it was high-level fighting. I just disagreed with the judges on some of these matches. That's my experience. Tell us about yours in the comment section. Thanks for stopping by.